Thank you guys for joining us today for the last session of the day. This session will be recorded. However, we're going to have Lauren and Katie here available in chat. So if any questions come up during the session, just feel free to pop them in chat and one of them will get back to you. But I'm excited to dive in and talk about marketing automation today. Talk about some of the strategies that we're using today to help clients help advance prospects through the journey. So I am so excited to have Patrick Leonard here with me today. He is the Chief Growth Officer at the Gatesworth, and we have worked together for the past couple of years to help drive automation strategy for his community. So Patrick, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited to have you. I'd love if you could give an intro and a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Sarah. Always good to chat with you. So yeah, we've had the pleasure of working together, in this partnership with Smart Grow and the Gates for the last couple of years, and we got the pleasure of working together at Sherpa years ago. So excited to that partnership in a different capacity. So yeah, I'm Patrick Leonard, as Sarah mentioned. I'm the Chief Growth Officer here at the Gatesworth Communities. We are in St. Louis, Missouri, for those of you who don't know. Um, so my background, as far as it goes, a lot of people, one of the things I love about this industry is that people have so many amazing, interesting stories of how they got into the wonderful world of senior living. Mine's a little less interesting. I was born into it years ago. By some form or fashion, I've been touched by this industry my entire life. I'm the son of a developer and operator here in St. Louis for the last 40 years. And so I've also been a loved one of senior living residents, having four family members in my lifetime live in communities up until the time that they passed. I grew up working part-time in maintenance, construction, dining, and more in senior living communities. And I've also partnered or consulted with over 1,000 communities across the country for about 7 years during my time with two different technology providers here in the senior living space. So now I've come back home here to the Gatesworth Communities for the last 3 years now, back on the operator side, leading the leasing and marketing efforts for our four communities. And it's really been a blessing. It's been a lot of fun. And so, for those of you who don't know, the Gatesworth Communities are a group of four locally owned and operated private pay rental communities spanning the entire continuum here in St. Louis, Missouri. We have four communities, but two campuses. We were kind of the first of our kind here in St. Louis, in the St. Louis market, and even the country, and have been awarded locally and nationally as a luxury senior living option here in our market. So, in a little bit, we'll go into a little bit deeper dive into how we adopted automation with the help of Smart Girl Digital and some of the specific areas that we chose to focus on. So excited to be here with you all.
Yes, glad to have you, Patrick. And the Gatesworth communities are beautiful. If you're ever in the St. Louis, Missouri area, I highly encourage you to stop by. I'm sure maybe Patrick will let you look around, but they are beautiful. I know I have personally spent many years in senior living as well and have been really passionate about automation because I've seen how it can be personalized to help your sales teams as well as ensure that you are providing the right touch points to your audience at the right time. And so I'm really happy that Patrick was willing to work with us over these past couple of years to develop marketing automation strategy for his community. So we're going to dive in today and we're going to actually look at some case studies on a few of the campaigns that we've built. Before we dive in, I'm going to talk about some of the scenarios that we see often when people are looking for a community, right? So we know it's a very long and complex journey, and I think about like just when I'm buying something, like for example, a couch or a TV, how much research I do on that one item, and that's just like such a small decision in comparison to the decision that prospects and families are making. So I know that many people are doing a lot of research online when they're looking for communities, and everything has really changed so quickly in how people research and a lot of the self-service options that are available now. So, with with chatbots now available and just more information and pricing transparency, I think we're seeing more people in this kind of quiet researcher stage where they're interested, they're not ready to engage, but they want more information. But when you call them or follow up, they may not be responsive, and it doesn't mean they're not interested. It just means that they're not quite, they're still in that research phase. So I don't know, Patrick, do you guys see this happen often when talking with prospects?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this quiet researcher will lead in nicely to a conversation we'll have in a little bit and how we came up with a strategy with Smart Girl to navigate this type of quiet researcher. It's happening more and more, as you all know today. It'll continue to grow in a lot of different facets, particularly as AI has taken off.
Mhm.
And yeah, we developed a campaign specifically to address this that I'll talk a little bit more about later that was really geared to help prospects who weren't necessarily ready to talk to sales yet, but still provide them with some education and an opportunity to learn more before they're ready to take that next step.
Yeah, so we'll dive into our next scenario persona here, and that's the curious connector. And when someone does finally inquire on your website, that's a big step. And so it's important that your community is following up in a timely manner and making a good first impression. So we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about how we created some automation strategy to address this particular stage of the journey and what kind of results we've seen when we are able to automate really personalized yet timely communication after someone inquires on your website or other digital channels. So the next scenario here is the hesitant heart. And this is, I'm sure everyone in sales can relate to this, but you've had a great conversation or you've had even maybe a great tour, and that person has shown a lot of interest, but after the conversation, they go cold or maybe they ghost you. And I think it's really easy to think, oh, they're not interested or, oh, I did something wrong. But the reality is they're probably just facing a lot of emotional objections or overwhelm or crisis at home. And that's why they've gone quiet. And so I think instead of, just calling, or taking it personally, we really looked at some ways that we could leverage automation to help continue to nurture these prospects and family members, because we know that many times they do come around on their own timetable, but make sure that we've kind of been able to take some of that burden off the sales team's plate. So we'll look at that campaign as well to address this particular scenario. The last scenario that I'll share here is kind of the thoughtful decision maker. Typically, when we see people come in for a tour, oftentimes that tour experience is great. And when everyone walks away, it's just kind of a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to then, okay, we've seen the community, we've seen what life could be here. So I feel like at that stage in the journey, it's a lot of pressure to get serious and start making some decisions. So we found that it's really important that after those tours happen to have timely yet personalized follow-up from not only the sales teams, but other members at the community as well. So we're going to talk about some automation that we've used to help support people in that kind of decision-making phase of the journey. So we have a lot to dive into, and I just wanted to share some of these scenarios. Feel free to kind of pop in chat if you agree or disagree, or maybe have other kind of stories or scenarios that resonate with you. But what we have put together through automation has addressed some of the objections here. So, Patrick, let's talk about the Gatesworth and automation strategy. I think something that was a big challenge, and correct if I'm wrong, Patrick, but when we first started working together, you guys actually had a really high volume of leads in the CRM, and many just like weren't ready to move forward. They were kind of in that thinking stage. So pretty quickly, we put together some strategy to make sure that we were addressing touch points for every lead and where they were at in the journey. So they all weren't really at the same place. We had to kind of identify what was the right message at the right time, but we were able to kind of get them into the right campaign to one, move prospects forward in the journey, two, save the sales team's time and kind of maximize their efficiency so that they can spend time with the prospects who are ready to come in and tour or talk on the phone. And then three, just wanting to build trust and connection at really every point in the journey. And it's important to know that from that first touch all the way through to like when someone tours, there are personalized touch points going out to prospects and families. So to show what that looks like more visually, here's kind of just a linear map of the prospect journey. And we know that this isn't always so linear, but I think this is a good visual to show where we implemented some automation strategies. So we're going to look to it kind of a funnel sprint campaign, which we'll talk more about. We also implemented a welcome campaign right after someone inquires. We implemented a re-engagement campaign to address some of those cold or unengaged leads. And then we also implemented a post-tour campaign for personalized follow-up after someone tours a community. So we're going to look individually at each one of those campaigns, and we're going to look at results, and we're going to look at what the messaging was within each one of those. So Patrick, I will let you kind of talk about some of these campaigns and why we created them and what type of results we saw. So if you want, we'll start with the lead magnet campaign here.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for teeing it up by mapping out those four different campaigns we focused on at different stages, because I think it was really important for us to do this thoughtfully. Just some background, a little bit more background on the Gatesworth before I dive into this one is, we have an ownership group who's been here since the beginning, and I'll say a little bit old school. We've been we were heavy on the print up until a few years ago. We hadn't really dove into the digital world at all, much less automation or AI or anything like that. And so it was a little bit of a mindset shift. We've historically been full, we've been blessed with that, but COVID, like everyone else, took a hard hit on us. And we have 297 independent living apartments. So as you can imagine, closing the front door for a while did take the biggest strain on our occupancy that we've ever seen in our history. And so we stepped into this, 40 apartments down, and with a whole bunch of overdue tasks. So a lot of different things went into that as far as organizing it. But one of the ways was inserting automation in these different campaigns and touch points that Sarah's talking about and that we're about to dive into, because it really helped us prioritize and segment our pipeline in a much more thoughtful and meaningful way and refocus the sales team's effort and kind of preserve their time in the right areas. So just wanted to mention that. So the first one that we're going to talk about is this lead magnet email campaign. So this one's geared for the very top of the funnel. This is for those people who are browsing on the website, that first scenario that Sarah mentioned earlier on. And these are the ones who aren't necessarily ready to talk to sales yet, but are interested in learning a little bit more. So of course you have your website, your landing pages, but we actually created a digital magazine that someone could download at no cost, of course, to just learn a little bit more about the history and the lifestyle of what life was like at the Gatesworth. That included, of course, our history, about the features and amenities, about the people, both staff and residents, and some of their stories. And it was a great way for people to learn a little bit more about us before picking up the phone and calling and engaging sales. So it was really thoughtfully created by the Smart Girl team with 5 different touch points after someone downloaded the magazine from our website. And it was really just to be a resource and to kind of, like I mentioned, highlight what life could be like at the Gatesworth, in a non-pressure way. Also getting people to think about some of the practical resources they might need as far as downsizing, financial calculators, different resources like that. And so this campaign was 5 different touch points over a 26-day period, and really was geared for those people earlier on, as we like to call it, the thinking stage, those who are still ambivalent about whether a move makes sense or not. They still haven't really made that decision. So it worked really well. And, over the 12 months, you'll see we had, almost 2 downloads per month. Oh, I'm sorry, way more than that. We had over ten downloads per month. Um, it drove a lot of return tours after downloading. Um, and the open rate of these emails was pretty incredible. And again, the idea of here is that it's the top of the funnel. We're not necessarily expecting to see huge tour conversions from this necessarily, but the fact that these emails had 77% open rate was amazing. We knew these folks were being nurtured before they were ready to talk to sales, and it really helped focus and save a lot of the team's time by doing so. Now, we did put an automated trigger after the campaign was complete to put a task on the sales team's radar to do a little bit more research about this person and to see if it made sense based on any activity that they had done to follow up later on with a call or an email to engage with them.
Yeah.
But really strong top of the funnel resource for us that continues to just provide to fill up that top of the funnel for us at the Gatesworth.
Yeah, and I almost think of these as the marketing qualified leads. And I think in the past, there's been scenarios where if someone downloads this, you would send it straight to sales. And I don't know that that's always the right path because someone's like, whoa, I just wanted the magazine. And now they're getting, sales calls. Whereas I think we were a bit more strategic about it and making sure that they went through that 26-day drip campaign before we alerted sales. And hopefully by then they've had some time to build some trust and connection with who the Gatesworth is before they're passed off to sales and sales is following up with a call. Um, so yeah, we've seen some great results with this. I'll just show a quick picture here of the assets that were created, and that included a landing page. It included the digital magazine as well as all of the emails, of course, within the campaign. So I think Patrick, too, you guys even made some printed copies of the magazine that you hand out at events, and
We
um,
did, yeah, yeah. It was a powerful takeaway, really nicely well done magazine, like you would get, in the mail from a nice publication. So yeah, it was a great physical asset and takeaway as well.
great, great. All right, so now we're moving on and we're talking a little bit about the welcome campaign. And this is like for our curious connector persona back a few slides ago, but there's only that one chance to make a good first impression. So Patrick, I'll let you talk about what we
Yeah, definitely. The welcome email campaign. So this was designed to make sure that we were providing timely follow-up once someone does actually take that step to fill out a form to talk to sales. So I was telling Sarah, when we were building this, that I was admittedly a little bit hesitant, right? Coming from kind of that old school mindset a little bit that was passed on to me. Um, that, when someone reaches out, we encourage our team to reach out promptly and make that human connection with a phone call and really to dive in to learn about this person. And so I had to reframe my thinking to say, hey, this is both can live harmoniously together, this marketing effort with the personalized sales touch. And so that shift, I think, was really helpful because one, it gave us the peace of mind that those were being responded to immediately if our team was busy on tours at the time and couldn't reach out immediately. Um, and two, it also provided the prospect who inquired with immediate information about the community that are probably the first questions that they're going to ask you anyway. And so it kind of cuts through some of that tactical information that, of course, our sales team is available to answer, but really it helps us reframe when the sales team does follow up with that first contact and that phone call, it helps them to cut through some of that more tactical feature dumping type of information and really focus on building trust and connecting with the prospect. Um, so that was a huge benefit for us, and the sales team really saw that benefit and not stepping on their toes of what their follow-up would be like and making the prospects feel like they weren't getting a personalized follow-up. It wasn't that at all. It actually felt more personal with the combination of this immediate response and relevant information paired with the follow-up from the sales team, putting a voice to the community, and talking through in a little bit more depth and detail about who this prospect was and why they reached out in the first place. So it's just extremely helpful tool for us. As it mentions here, this one was a 4-step process when new contacts reached out. And again, this could be a manual entry into the CRM. It could be from any source. Whenever a new lead is created in the CRM, regardless of the source, this campaign would kick off. And so they'd get tailored content. We built some content specific for if a prospect or their influencer or loved one reached out, which I think was helpful. Small tweaks, but impactful. Um, and these came directly from our executive director, kind of the owner of the building who is making that first touch point, opposed to again feeling like it's just a salesperson reaching out to you initially through these emails. So these were done over a 10-day drip sequence. And I think a big thing to highlight here is that, one of the goals of this four-step campaign was, of course, to invite them in for a tour or for us to schedule a visit with them. If at any point in this drip campaign someone did schedule a tour, and of course that had to be logged in the CRM, they would fall off this campaign so they weren't continuing to receive irrelevant information. So that is the nice thing about these campaigns as well. If at any point the prospect takes a certain action, and it's logged into CRM, they'll be removed from the campaign, that particular campaign that may no longer be relevant to them, based on what the interaction is. So I think that's a key step as well.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, this was, again, it's to kind of drip with some information. Now that they've taken the step to talk to sales, we know they want a little bit more specific information than someone who reaches out just filling out that lead magnet magazine campaign. So we tailor the message and the resources specifically to that, with some more pointed call to actions to invite them to visit, and talk to someone more in depth about the community.
So you're
So
not the first one, Patrick, either, who has some concerns about the welcome campaign, because I do think other communities may look at that and say, well, sales is reaching out. Why do I need to automate a touch point? My sales team is calling, which is true. But the campaign was really intended to support the sales teams and not step on their toes, but make sure that timely follow-up is happening and there is some trust building and information being provided so that when they do call, that makes that conversation even better.
yeah, definitely. And again, the results here were great. The call-ins generated, the new participants enrolled. Um, the open rates again are really, really strong. Um, so we know that we're staying top of mind. Again, these are still earlier on people, majority in the sales funnel, but kind of in that mid stage. And so to have those open rates and the amount of time that it saved our sales team from sending this information manually, um, is just incredible, because it again allows them to focus on those face-to-face interactions and that time on the phone with prospects, and really coming up with personal creative follow-up and planning for meaningful next steps, um, and avoiding the mundane repetitive work that can be automated in a sense for a specific audience who's looking for that information because they've raised their hand and asked for it.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly. So, all right, we'll keep moving on here. We're going to talk about the re-engagement email campaign. And this, again, addresses that lead who has gone cold or maybe has ghosted the salesperson. And it's easy to think like they're not interested anymore. I think one stat that has stood out to me is that this is from Aligned Benchmark data, is just that 60% of senior living leads who are inactive will re-engage if they're nurtured properly over time. So, yeah, Patrick, talk a little bit about why we created this campaign.
Yeah, this is honestly, I think, probably my favorite campaign. I mentioned the kind of the scenario we walked into or found ourselves in when we were down 40 apartments after COVID, and just had pages of overdue tasks in the CRM, which makes my skin crawl. But it's understandable at the same time, too. I've been in that seat and I understand why that can happen. But this campaign really helped us. What we found is a lot of those overdue tasks were the ones who were what we call future prospects. They weren't necessarily actively engaging or advancing in the sales process. So naturally, those future prospects were being a little bit put by the wayside, because the sales team only had so many hours in a day. So this helped us to continue to create and schedule manual follow-up with those future prospects and not lose sight of them because they are so important. But it refocused what the cadence and what the purpose of that follow-up would be, because the re-engagement campaign gave our team the comfort that there was going to be some interaction going on in the background that was taken care of for them by this strip trip campaign. So this was developed with it be 5 different touch points to re-engage prospects who were either future or had a specific lost lead reason. So ones that had either gone cold, or they'd been closed out because we hadn't heard back from them. So they've been closed out altogether. So these were meant to be more, we know these people had reached out. They know that we know that there's some type of need. People don't reach out to senior living fund. So we know that for fun on a whim. So we knew that there was a reason that we could help these people. So without being pushy, but to still provide resources to let them know we were still there, we developed this campaign very thoughtfully with specific resources to help advance them along themselves in the prospect by providing this content to them over a 26-day period as soon as they became a future or lost lead status. So these topics were focused on emotional readiness, downsizing resources, addressing cost concerns, highlighting the benefits of socialization, and hearing stories of residents who currently live in the communities to help motivate them to re-engage and take that next step. And so I think the results for this one were pretty amazing, given the category of leads who are entered into this. Again, otherwise ones that most people are closing out and never contacting again. Over a 12-month period, we saw 65 people enrolled into this campaign, and 19 of those people returned for a tour. So that's close to average of 2 a month of people we have otherwise thought were completely gone, closed leads, we're never going to hear from them again. You know, an average of 2 per month coming back in for a tour through this campaign is actually pretty incredible if you think about it. It may seem like a small number, but again, these are people who once engaged, now re-engaging. And when typically what we see when those people re-engage is that they're much more serious this time. So incredible open rate for this audience as well, 63% for people we think have gone cold and we're hesitant to contact them again. It's amazing to see that they're still diving in and reading these resources. And again, just highlighting the sales team time at the bottom there is invaluable because again, these are otherwise either leads that are not being touched at all, or we're scrambling going through those overdue tasks to keep up in addition to our active leads to meaningfully touch base with them. So it really helps save the sales team time and really helped keep those prospects engaged who otherwise could have gone cold or been lost altogether.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's, we know that if someone has come to your website, like, and even if all they did was download a brochure, there's interest there, right? Because people don't just spend the time on your website, download a brochure, and then disappear and never have a need again. So we knew that interest was there. It was just about nurturing them in the right way so that the Gatesworth was top of mind when they were ready to move forward. So yeah, really excited to see the results of this one, Patrick. I know this campaign has been live for a while now, and I think we're in probably year 2 or 3 of this campaign being live. So it's still great to see that the content we created was evergreen and it continues to enroll new participants each month. I'll give a little shout out. I know we added and we've continued to optimize the messaging and added a few of your Dash Media videos in, which have been great. And kind of shout out to Dash Media because they've created a bunch of, really engaging content stories that I think really that messaging aligns well with that nurture approach of this campaign.
Definitely.
So awesome. All right. Last one here is our post-tour survey campaign. This one is intended to create personalized follow-up after someone tours the community. So Patrick, I'll let you talk a little bit about this one.
Yeah. This is another great one and kind of had dual purpose, I'd say. Pretty self-explanatory. It was a survey sent out after a tour was logged in the CRM. And again, big disclaimer here, this is not to replace any type of personalized creative follow-up. Gatesworth is very, very strong believers in making that creative follow-up after a tour or after any interaction, very thoughtful and personalized. So this was just a complement to that personalized follow-up from the sales team. But again, we knew this was something that would be triggered immediately. It was a two-step campaign to really gather feedback. One of our initiatives as well was to boost our feedback and our reviews of our community, both for residents and for prospects. And I think we've seen that the response from prospects who are willing to provide feedback and even give a 5-star review of your community before they even move in has been pretty amazing. And so this allowed us to get candid feedback on the tour and see what was most important to them, anything we could have done better, and two, hopefully lead to a 5-star Google review. So it was kind of dual purposed and extremely beneficial. And again, it was a nice timely follow-up to just say, even if they didn't respond or give us that feedback, because a lot of people don't, of course, we all get reviews frequently from places we visit, and we don't always have the time or think about responding, but I always appreciate at least knowing that they sent that option for my feedback, and I think our prospects do as well. Just that knowing that we care to even ask for it, I think is the first step, and anybody who responds is just absolutely bonus. So this is a great campaign. Again, pretty straightforward, just 2 emails, but it does prompt if someone does leave a positive review to send them a link directly to our Google review to hopefully leave. They'll share that feedback with the rest of the world as well. So we did have a strong enrollment. We did, again, incredible open rate. You may say that 121%. Like, what the heck? How's that even possible? But that indicates that some recipients actually opened the email more than once, which is great. And again, multiple surveys per month were completed. So we see that as a huge win.
Yeah, I think this is such a kind of like you said, Patrick, it's like a common sense campaign, but not everyone is making that follow up after the tour. So I think they really lose opportunities to hear good and bad feedbacks and identify, any ways to improve while also making the request for a Google rating at the right time. So glad to see we've continued to have good response on this campaign as well. That kind of just takes us into like, okay, well, what is the data telling us today about the digital landscape? Because I think what people were doing 2, 3 years ago with automation has already changed because AI is here now. And so it's even harder to stand out today with messaging, kind of given the AI world that we live in, because AI is so good at creating content, but it's not always content that's going to resonate with the right audience. So the data tell us today, what the data is telling us today is that it's really important that you're kind of not relying on sales strategies that rely on quick wins. We know that prospects are starting their research earlier, and it's important that you have kind of those longer term nurture strategies to make sure that you can kind of build that trust and connection with people over the entire sales cycle. It is a longer sales cycle than kind of ever before, given that there's so much information available online. And there's more leads coming from digital sources. So your sales teams are dealing with a large volume of leads from digital sources, and it's important that there's processes and systems in place that don't replace them, but that support them with personalized follow-up so that they can focus on the active leads who are ready to tour and kind of have that face-to-face and voice-to-voice conversation. People just are starting their research earlier. Typically the average age is, between 76 to 84. So we know that people are starting earlier. So you want to make sure that you do have the right calls to action and the right kind of prospect journey and automation in place to nurture them from the very start. So that's just a little bit of what we're seeing today. I think a lot of people are asking, well, what does it take to differentiate your messaging, right? How do you have automation and personalization together so that it doesn't feel generic or robotic with anything that you're sending out? Because that's the last thing we want to be doing when we work in senior living and we are dealing with such a personal decision. So a few things and tips that we always recommend is just making sure that you're really looking at your customer stage motivators and objections. We always say that quality is better than quantity when it comes to your audience segments and list building. Yes, it's great to have a huge list, but oftentimes we actually recommend segmenting and niching down to smaller audiences because typically that's when we see more trust and connection and advancement happening, is when we can be really specific and granular in the audience segmentation. So we're not just out there, the days of sending an e-blast, a generic e-blast out, just really aren't happening anymore. It's more about really niche and really segmented audiences. I think it's also so important that operators are looking at their tech stack and integrations, and making sure that their sales CRM is talking to their marketing automation platform and they are able to track that entire journey. Without it, you're not able to personalize follow up in the right way. If you don't know where that prospect is and what actions they've taken, how are you going to develop the right messaging for them? So looking at your tech stack and your integrations is really important. Making sure that sales and marketing is aligned. A lot of what we talked about today, Patrick, I think it is very common that sales teams are concerned about automated messages going out on their behalf, right? We want to make sure that every touch point is personalized, and we want to make sure that, we aren't stepping on sales toes and stepping on their process. So I think there needs to be alignment and conversation around campaigns, alignment and kind of goals and feedback at different stages of when the campaign launches and post-launch, and just making sure that everyone is kind of on the same page with the cadence and messaging of your emails and campaigns. And then continuous optimization. It isn't set it and forget it as much as we love to want that to happen. I think there's always some continuous tweaking and refinement of your messaging, even after campaigns are launched. So, Patrick, anything to add there? Otherwise, we'll wrap up. I think we've done a good overview of what we're doing today at the Gatesworth and how it's helped
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. No, this was great. Thanks again for having me, Sarah. I think these are all awesome points. And I think, my overarching message is, we by no means are the most advanced in automation. But I think the key was we did it thoughtfully and we did it in specific areas of opportunity. So you can always start really small and adjust and add on or scale back. So I think these are all really valuable takeaways that you shared here.
Thank you. And yes, agree. I think a lot of what we have in place is, not the most complex or the most complicated workflows, but I think they're really strong foundational workflows that are truly impactful to your sales and marketing process. So I think in the future, Patrick, I hope we get to some more complexity down the road, but I think we've got a super strong strategy in place, and there's so much tech out there available right now. And yes, all of that tech is so important, but having the right strategy and messaging is equally important so that everything does feel personalized. So thank you guys for joining us today for this session. I hope you were able to walk away with some ideas around your own automation strategy. Thank you so much, Patrick, for joining me today, and for your time to go through all of this case studies. Smart Girl, something that we are very passionate about is empowering in-house marketing teams to own and manage their own automation. We know that a lot of operator teams out there want to be doing more with automation. It's not always that lack of trying. I think sometimes it's having the right resources and partners to build those campaigns together. So something that we have launched is our half-day virtual workshop for senior living teams, where we will work together to build, automate, and launch a core marketing automation campaign together. So if you are interested, please check that out. Otherwise, we hope to talk with you all more soon. Have a great day. Thank you guys.